Hello and welcome. Welcome to Life of a Wizard by Mike Walter. It is a interactive story, so let us begin. Wizards, from the kindly old white bearded casters wearing robes with stars and moons, to the battle-hardened war mage throwing fireballs at dragons. The royal family has always had one on hand, a wise diviner to lead the kingdom into peace, or a dangerous conjurer to dominate all of the land under one rule, or perhaps a divine healer, an alchemist, or even a necromancer. The combinations are boundless. Let me tell you my story. I wasn't always a wizened old wizard, you know. Wizards begin their lives the same as everyone else. I was born in the small village in the kingdom of Daria. King Norbert and Queen Audrey reigned in the capital city of Tornassa, which was many miles away from my small village. I remember the day I was born. My parents were good people. They were loving individuals. They were very good to me, their precious little girl. They named me Helena. I grew up in the village of Elmvale, where nearly everyone was human, although there were a few exceptions. The entire kingdom of Daria was like that, besides the dwarves under the grey mountains, the elves in the heart forest, and the orcs in the wilderness to the west. Our kingdom was very racially tolerant when I was young. My parents and I were goblins. It was very difficult being a goblin and growing up in a human village. My parents were surprisingly gentle and kind, for goblins. The other races considered us very ugly, but our green skin, big ears, and yellow teeth looked normal to me. We were the only goblins I ever saw growing up. There were no other goblins living in any human cities that I knew of. My parents weren't poor, as we always seemed to have what we needed when I was growing up. They always made sure I had nice clothes and good shoes. During the holidays, they always seemed to find enough coin to buy me a special toy and have a big meal. I still remember my mother's soft voice when she sang me to sleep, and my father's calm strength whenever I awoke in the night from a bad dream. Even as a young child, I was drawn into the unknown. I remember my first magical experience, even though I was only 5 years old. I didn't know where my parents were, but I wandered off alone into the forest. I remember I wasn't scared. It was a wonderful adventure to me. I wandered through the trees and met some pixies. The little sprites flew around giggling. I played with them in their forest home. They taught me many things about their world. At the age of 7, I made a friend. Childhood friends are special since they remain a part of you for the rest of your life, even after you've grown apart. I was surprised that anyone would want to be friends with me, considering that I was a goblin. My best friend was a girl. Her name was Robin. Robin was a half-orc. We got along really well, even though I was a goblin and Robin was a half-orc. I learned that even a race as aggressive as half-orcs could still be friends. We spent a lot of time together. Prince Gareth, the heir of the royal throne, was 17 at the time. His younger sister, Princess Emily, was 2 years younger. I sometimes pretended that I was Princess Emily. Robin and I often played being royalty among other games. We were nearly inseparable. We used to play imaginary games in the forest. We had a wonderful time among the trees. He was also learned a lot about various plants and animals that made the forest their home. There was a bully in my village who was a few years older than me. Yes, even I had this kind of trouble when I was a child. He terrorized my childhood. His name was Nolan. Nolan was a human. I remember the day Nolan started picking on me. I tried reasoning with the bully. I was still beaten up, which made me wonder what caused his anger. I was 7 years old when I started noticing the difference between boys and girls. I was attracted to girls. That year, that was the year. That was the year I met a very special girl. Her name was Gwen. She was a half orc. I could hardly believe that I had found love. Gwen was very special to want to spend time with a goblin. I knew that people sometimes looked at us strangely behind our backs. It wasn't very often, it wasn't every day that a goblin dated a half orc. I grew a great appreciation for the aggressive passion of orcs. We did everything together, Gwen and I. It started as friendship, but as the years went by, our feelings matured into love. I experienced new emotions that I couldn't describe. I did everything I could just to be in her presence, like helping her parents at their lumberyard. I even learned about tr- types of trees and the lumber they provided. Gwen was my first love. I still remember how soft her lips were when I kissed them for the first time. I'll never forget those wonderful days. Life in Elmville was pleasant, and it was a beautiful place to grow up. There was a sparkling river that ran through the center of it, and farms all around us. We had all the amenities of a small town as well. I spent most of my time with Robin, my best friend. My nights were filled with dreaming about Gwen. I enjoyed swimming in the town's river on hot summer days. Robin and I made a raft to float down the river. We took all our camping gear with us and did remarkably well for the first hour. Unfortunately, the logs came apart after that, and everything we brought with us sunk to the bottom of the river. I remember one day when we found a little puppy in the back alley. It looked so sad and lonely, which made me think it didn't belong to anyone. It was very dirty and had a broken leg. I nursed it back to health. I fed it and kept it clean until the leg healed. It was a strong little dog. I was 12 years old when tragedy struck. Rumors of trouble had been building for weeks, but as a kid, I never paid it any attention. One day, I saw the streets full of smoke. At first, I thought it was the great dragon Parnassus breathing fire upon my small village. That wasn't the case. Soon I learned that raiders were setting fire to the houses and stores. Our small village was being attacked by dwarves. I wondered where King Norbert was and why his soldiers weren't there to protect us. I later learned that most of Daria had been attacked that year. The king really had his hands full. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed a sword to protect my friends and family. I saw one of the dwarf raiders kill a town guard, so I picked up his sword. I wasn't sure if I could actually kill anyone with it, but it felt good in my hands. A raider came around the corner, surprising me. There was a scuffle, and the raider ended up dead. Few villagers saw the end of the fight, and I became a local hero. The dwarves were ruthless. Many people were killed, and several buildings burned down. My first love, Gwen, was killed. I cried for weeks, knowing that I'd never forget her smile. They say that your first love is the deepest, and I think I still believe that. I was told that her house had burned down during the raid, and her parents had been killed too. I'll never forget Gwen. The attack changed everything, putting an end to my carefree days as a child. I likely would have had a few more years of fun and innocence, but after the attack, I had to get a job and become an adult. I started working for the family business. We owned a store. I learned to haggle and appraise items. Also learned how to keep inventory and sell things in order to make a profit. When I was 14, Nolan, the bully, and some of his friends cornered me in the alley. I had thought that now that I was a storekeeper, these things, these types of things wouldn't happen. Nolan didn't see it that way. Remember that dog I helped? He came back and helped me fight them off. They had me cornered, when suddenly the dog dove over my shoulder and landed right on Nolan, digging his teeth into his arms while Nolan screamed in pain and surprise. The dog let go after a few minutes, and Nolan and the other bullies ran away. I knew at that moment that I could form a special bond with this wonderful animal. Did I find my familiar that day? Yes, I did. I named I named it Shadow. Shadow never left my side. You're probably wondering when my magical training began. I became a mighty wizard after all. Yet so far, my story has been about my childhood. I was 15 years old when I left my job as a storekeeper. I stole a magic ring from a sorcerer who visited my village. He caught me right away, making me suspect that he used magic. He was surprisingly nice about the whole thing, saying that I had likely been drawn to the ring due to my potential to become a talented wizard. He, suspect- he, he suggested that I go to the academy in order to unlock this power. I decided to do as he suggested, and he even let me keep the ring. I was nervous about going to the academy. I didn't think that a goblin would be allowed to entry, but I decided that I would try anyway and see what happened. I knew I needed a horse to get to the academy. It was in the royal city of Tarnasa, many miles away. I purchased a horse for 75 gold. It was a nice animal, and I was happy to have to own such a reliable mount of my very own. I mounted up and left my village. I didn't know it at the time, but my magic would end up greatly extending my horse's lifespan. I decided to name it Blaze. Needless to say, Shadow, my dog, came with me. I had a nice little party before I left. We had it in the newly rebuilt tavern since the old one had been burned down during the dwarf raid. We drank a lot, and Robin got really drunk. My mother cried as I told her that I would try to write home as often as I could. I gave up the life of a storekeeper and left for the academy the next day. We will continue with the next chapter next time. But thank you for listening, and have a